Hey guys, how you doing? Good morning or evening, wherever you are. Today it's Sunday here, Sun God Day here. First day of the week, and I was online looking at some posts about. Again, we were talking about all sewn together for us. The fabric is put together for us. I believe that's also another thing in the Torah where it says that we're supposed to wear clothing with no seams, right? And even Messiah had, a garment that had no seam. Now, I believe that just represents that we're just supposed to have one solid teaching, of one solid understanding. It's all together. That's our clothing is, righteousness and truth. And I believe when the Romans took and they divided the garments, meant that they divided the truth and it was scattered. So now the truth is scattered. Romans, of course, like Roman Paul was, I believe where this all began. So anyway, I wanted to talk about what food sacrificed to idols represents, because I don't believe it literally represents putting food in front of idols. Because what Paul says there in 1 Corinthians 8 is somewhat true. We know that, even Satan uses scripture and Satan speaks some truth. He only twists the truth. So if we're here in 1 Corinthians 8, and it was speaking, first of all, if you've watched these videos and I've already spoken on food, and you've watched some of these things on clean and unclean foods, maybe it's not like you have to watch, everyone has free will. So this might not apply, so don't worry about it. But here in 1 Corinthians 8, Paul talks about concerning food offered to idols. He says, we know that we have knowledge, and knowledge puffs up, and love builds up. If anyone thinks he knows something. Verse 4, so then concerning eating of foods offered to idols, we know that an idol is no matter at all in the world, and that there is no other Elohim but one. But even if there are so-called mighty ones, whether in heaven or on earth, as there are many mighty ones and many masters, for us there is one Elohim, the Father, from whom all came and from whom we live, and one Master, Yahusha, Messiah, through whom all came and through whom we live. So, sure, what he says there seems correct, except I don't believe we have the full understanding of what food offered to idols is. Let me give you an example of what I believe food offered to idols means. First of all, here in Revelations chapter 2, we have here 2 verse 14. I hold a few matters against you, because you have there those who adhere to the teaching of Balaam, who taught Balak to put a stumbling block before the children of Israel, to eat food offered to idols and to commit whoring. And also down in verse 20, it says, I hold against you that you allow that woman Jezebel, or Isabel, who calls herself a prophetess, to teach and lead my servants astray, to commit whoring and to eat food offered to idols. So here we know Revelation is prophecy. Some of it is recordings of those days that John was in, but also it's prophecies of the future. It speaks of the New Jerusalem and all these things. So I would wonder then what today equates to eating food offered to idols, if this is prophecy of these days or of all days. Because I don't see people offering food to literal statues. Now, maybe the occult, and maybe there are some of these things going on in other places. But I'm not concerned about that because I'm not partaking in that as far as I know and understand. So, what in my life, what is around me that may represent eating food offered to idols? Okay. Well, according to my studies into food, these days, there's a lot of this GMO and processed foods around us and chemical foods. One thing, I believe I did a teaching on this, where we're talking about gluten intolerance. What exactly is gluten intolerance? Why, after thousands of years, are we suddenly unable to digest wheat? Well, I learned that our wheat these days is being sprayed by glyphosate, which is a chemical, and they spray it to kill it early, so it's easier on their farm equipment when they harvest it. They want to pre-harvest this wheat, so they kill it. Why do they pre-harvest it? Because they want to hurry up and plant more crops. Why more crops? To make more money. So does this mean that this is food sacrificed of its natural life and its natural time to grow to the God of more money? In the same way, we may consider the way that the animals are treated. I learned that there's farmers who inject their animals with growth hormones, or they feed them food with growth hormones in it. They're locked in their cages, and they artificially inseminate some of these animals, and then when they give birth, they take away their young before it's time, so that way they can have more milk for more money, growth hormones for more money, artificially inseminating them because they bring forth bigger products. I guess, I'd have to look into all the reasons, but we know you follow the money and it keeps leading back to the God of more money. So isn't this food offered to idols, the idol of more money? You cannot serve both God and mammon. So when we eat these foods, we become infected as well, because what is in them is then in us. We eat what we eat eats. So whatever the animals are eating is also what we're eating. And I also learned that today they're eating a lot of genetically modified corn. So then all these animals' products are tainted. If you have a cow that eats GMO corn, and GMO means genetically modified, meaning that they rearrange the DNA for whatever reason they say. But say if this is your DNA strands and this is our strands, our DNA in our body, our cells, they're supposed to fit together like puzzle pieces. The alive living plants, their oils and stuff are lipid soluble. They enter into our cell's membrane. They pass through that oily barrier into our cells and more easily to digest. And if then your DNA is also information, that's a code. It's numbers, and numbers are letters. Numbers and letters are the same thing to the Most High. It's just a different representation of the same thing. So if your DNA is numbers, then if you rearrange your DNA, you're moving numbers around, and it becomes Babel. So when we eat this rearranged food, we become confused, or our body doesn't receive the correct information that it needs, which equals Babel. So really, we're filling ourselves with Babel. This is where the confusion begins. Babylon means city of confusion. So really, it all began with food. And wasn't that the very first command in the Garden of Eden, was do not eat the food which whatever I commanded you not to eat. So it's more than just, nowadays it's more than just a list of clean and unclean foods, Leviticus 11. It's more than that, because now we've offered food to the idol of more money. So as I was saying, when they when these animals eat GMO foods, then their milk is also tainted. Then that means all dairy. So our cheese, ice cream, all these things that come from the GMO corn. And you know what's interesting? What I looked up about the corn or the GMO, the company that makes these things called Monsanto, which is, if we unscramble that, seems to spell Satan's MO. And MO means mode of operation. And we know that Satan tempted Eve with food. It's interesting that the people that own these things also have these product lines like Apple. Apple, which, the computer has a bite out of the apple as if, they ate the fruit, as if apples are really the fruit. When I don't believe apples have anything to do with anything unless they're genetically modified. Which who knows, because there's so many things these days. It's difficult to guard ourselves from everything, but according to the scripture, we do the best that we can with what we have. For example, in Genesis 2, it says every seed-bearing plant, or is it Genesis 1:29? I'm sorry, did I say 2? Genesis 1:29. It says here, and Elohim said, "See, I have given you every plant that yields seed, which is on the face of all the earth, and every tree whose fruit yields seed. To you it is for food." So everything that grows of itself, of its own seeds, is organic. These days you'll see a lot of things that have the seeds taken out. So they'll even have these things called organic grapes, organic seedless grapes. I don't think so. So we need to learn how to discern. Now we do the best we can. Now, if I'm going to eat meat, of course I'll look for grass-fed, free range, things that are free, allowed to live their lives, at least, in the days we live. I believe that, the animals were created to really roam the earth. Roam. We've captured a lot of them. Maybe that's why Daniel only ate vegetables, right? Well, consider that even. See, I'm just thinking out loud, so don't mind me. I'm just working through this with you. Even Abraham, he had many livestock. Jacob, they all had livestock. Job had livestock. So I mean, I guess it's not wrong to own animals and to have them, but I believe that we should allow them to live natural lives. We allow them to mate naturally, allow them to choose their own food, to roam in the fields. So if we want to have fields, sure. Want to have fence them in, you own them, they're your livestock, sure. So when I look for food, of course I'm going to look for grass-fed. Now, I can look up and investigate and see some of these companies if they're really grass-fed or not, because like we just said, some of these packages lie. They'll say organic seedless grapes. Well, then I guess we're not defining organic. So that's what I mean, like when I say we do the best we can with our understanding. So food offered to idols. This is the kind of information that we need to share with our growers, with our farmers, because I don't know if they necessarily know what they're doing all the time, or if they're just following the information that's been passed down to them. They think that planting GMO seeds is the way to go because they say that they're resistant to the Roundup, right? So then they feel they can spray their crops with Roundup to kill the weeds. Did we really have such a problem with weeds? I don't believe we had all these things years ago when I was younger. I don't remember seeing many weeds and growing among the corn, but who knows how long this has been going on. I should look that up as well. But maybe, maybe to give, the lands a rest, or the way that we grow our foods, to leave the corners of the fields. Here in America, of course, our climate is different than over in Israel. If what was written in here, according to the way they grew, was for them to give their fields a rest every 7 years, because in their climates, they grow all year round, maybe it would be different here. Maybe our winter is giving the lands a rest. But they're not giving the lands a rest when they're pre-harvesting crops so you can hurry up and plant more, are we? We're trying to withdraw more from the soil than it's able to produce. So even if we're growing these products, but on the inside it's empty, it's depleted of its minerals, it's depleted of its energy because we absorbed it all. And when we pre-harvest things like wheat, that's the same as pulling a child out of its mother early. So it's like pulling a child out at 5 months instead of 9. And of course, it's not going to be complete. Our bodies are also unable to. Okay, I'm having a problem with connection. All right, I think that's enough to understand food offered to idols, right? I wish I was able to pause the video in between thoughts. I guess I can edit. All right, we'll have to work on that. I'll have to start writing things down, like my time.